This was like a recent aha that I had watching so many people use the principles that I wrote about in Fast Like a Girl. And I was asking myself, like, why do some people use those principles and they like drop weight really quickly? They get really good results. And other people seem to get stuck. What is the stickers? What is causing people to get stuck with that result? And when I dove into it, it's all goes back to this hormonal hierarchy. And the hierarchy is that if you are saturated with cortisol, you become insulin resistant. So it does not matter what the quality of your meal is. Yes, it does matter, but it matters as equally how what you're going to do with that cortisol. So I got thinking like, well, what if you bring oxytocin in? If oxytocin comes in, then now cortisol goes down and now you're more insulin sensitive. Okay, well, how do we bring oxytocin into the meal? And I literally, Shawn, I was like, think like the last couple of months, and I was like, we got to eat around people we love. We got to eat in a oxytocin rich environment. And that's what you're saying. And when you're saturated with oxytocin, your cells, literally from a blood sugar standpoint, are going to be able to take that blood sugar, put it in so that it can activate what it's supposed to activate in the cell so it doesn't get stored as fat. So I literally have been like thinking the environment matters as much as the quality of the food. And you just proved
Absolutely.
it scientifically.
Yes, and actually, there's in some ways this even trumps that, which I'll talk about in just a second. But you hit it right on the nose because I'm a big why person. I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
this is crazy that people are getting these health outcomes, these benefits from eating with people that they care about. And right, it goes to, and oxytocin gets this nickname of like the cuddle hormone or the love
Yeah.
hormone. And it's one of the few things that's been found to essentially kind of neutralize the activity of cortisol. And
Yes.
it's not just like a surface thing. There's a big switch over because with cortisol, which is for a lot of us, it's that, it's get up and go and all the things. We're very good at getting hype and getting up and getting going, but we're not very good at down regulating, right? So cortisol is part of this kind of sympathetic, we call it quote, fight or flight nervous system, which for most of us today, which is always, it's always just running in the background. And this is sort of like a system that is binary. Like you're not doing both at the same time. You're either fight or
Right.
flight, or you switch over to the parasympathetic. And here's the nickname for
Right.
this one. This is where it all comes together: rest and digest.
Right.
Rest and digest nervous system. And so what we're seeing as well is we're seeing improved assimilation of nutrients. We're seeing higher levels of satiety when we're eating with people that we care about. And also, again, the most remarkable aspect, and you just detailed some of the kind of underneath the hood things, is we're producing more oxytocin. And it's so rejuvenative in so many different ways. And also there's
Mhm.
another layer of this, which is just the psychological aspect, right?
Yeah.
When we are with people that we care about, and in particular, especially for kids, just to feel seen, especially today,
Yeah.
we have a deep human need to feel significance, like we matter. And so often, again, with all of our screens, and all of us have been guilty of this, of just being like, not now, I'm just, let me finish this thing. And our kids are just growing and changing at lightning speed. And so
Yeah.
to move all that stuff to the side, to get real face time, and to allow our kids and ourselves too to feel seen, to feel important, and to be able to offload stress, right? Just the act of talking, even if you're not talking about the thing, just the act of being present starts to offload
Yeah.
stress. And especially, again, in a safe space where you feel cared for. This is why those researchers found it wasn't just a reduction in work stress. There was a reduction in relationship conflict. They didn't have to talk about the conflict, but just being around those people, especially, there's something remarkable about doing it with food that's really, really nourishing for our souls.
Oh, I'm sure it's primal, don't you think? It's like we probably in the primal days, we didn't like take our piece of meat and like go off into the corner and eat. We ate around a fire. And so I'm sure there's a primal reason behind that. And it's interesting. The other thing that you have me thinking is so I've been working, personally coaching some people recently that have had some like food relationship challenges with food. Let's just put it this way. And I put continuous glucose monitors on them, is what I do. And one of the women said to me recently, she's like, I don't understand how I could eat a high carb meal with my family. She's like, I had family in town. She was staying in Copenhagen. She's like, I've had family in town, and all of a sudden they show up. I eat all the wrong things, and my glucose goes down. Explain
Hmm.
to me how that happened. And that's
Yes.
when I said, because the environment you are eating in matters. You can manage
Yes.
your blood sugar more effectively if you eat among in that rest and digest in that oxytocin rich environment. So I think it's so simple, it's so primal, and yet why aren't we doing it?
Yes, that is the question. And there's a reason why, of course. And you just really alluded to what I meant earlier. Like this potentially trumps even the food quality itself, which of course it
Yes.
matters. And what we tend to do in our culture today, and there's even a name for it, is stress eat. All right. We're stress
Yes.
eating. When we're in a stress state is when we tend to eat, quote, bad food, right? So things that are richer in sugar, in particular carbohydrates, but there's a primal reason for that too. These carbohydrates get serotonin going in our bodies a little bit more to just balance us out, make us feel a little bit more calm and balanced. But sometimes we don't realize that we're doing this. But the very best time to eat foods that we might slap a label on as being like a bad food or a cheat meal or something like that is when you feel good, when you are in that kind of oxytocin state, when you're feeling good, when you are with friends and family. This is one of the things we see in other cultures where, again, the celebration, they might be having wine and bread and all these things, but they're still their metabolic health is so far superior to
Right.
people that even eating here are eating a quote healthy diet, but they're eating oftentimes in isolation. And one of the studies, this was published in Nutrition Journal, found that yes, we do have strong data affirming that when we eat alone in isolation on a consistent basis, in particular in front of screens, we tend to have poorer food quality. We tend to eat
Mm.
more as well. And of course, we see worse health outcomes as well. And so this isn't just guesstimating or thinking that this is a theory. Like we know that this is the case. We're just getting more and more science to affirm this. And so what we want to do is proactively use this to our advantage. And as you mentioned,
Yeah.
why is this happening? I mean, this is really simple, but we here in the United States, we invented the TV dinner. We invented it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
And the marketing,
I'm a product of the '70s. I had TV dinners.
me too. I grew up in the 80s. You know, I had the Salisbury steak, mashed
Oh, yep,
potatoes, and that
yep.
limp
Oh,
corn, absolutely.
and the
And
apple pie. The apple pie was in the upper right-hand corner.
listen, and also, of course, like it's changing even our palate, right? So it's all
Yes.
these soft, kind of mushy. I'm eating a mushy steak, right? And so I'm not getting these flavor inputs and these different texture inputs that also drive us because after a meal like that, we have to have the apple pie. We have to have something with some texture, with
Mm.
some crunch to it, or potato chips, or crunchy cookies, or things like that. And by the way, this is affirmed. I don't know if people have heard about this. It's called the Sonic chip experiment, and it actually won a Nobel Prize. All right, the experiment itself, an Ig Nobel Prize, which is kind of like on the periphery of the Nobel Prizes, things that are kind of weird that essentially can make people
Right.
laugh, but also make you think. And so the sonic chip experiment, the researchers took test subjects and had them put on headphones so that they can modulate the crunch and the experience of the crunch from eating not Doritos, Pringles, because the Pringles are
Mm.
uniform in that tall can. They're pretty much the same uniform size, density, all the things. But what they found was that by increasing the volume of certain notes of the crunchiness, it made the study participants feel like the chips were fresher than they were, about 15% fresher and better for
Nice.
them, essentially. More enjoyable was the key word. So more enjoyment, better for them, fresher, all the things based on the sound. And this speaks to
Wow.
like our experience of food isn't just about the food. It's not just about taste.
Mm.
It's textures, it's sound. And this goes back, we keep jumping back into early humanity, but these were all essential inputs for us to really find out if that food is good for us, if it's safe to eat.
Yeah.
These were all
Yeah.
inputs because there's a big difference between biting into a crisp apple and a soft, mushy apple, right?
Yes.
We would be
Yes.
averse to that. But with processed foods, they found ways to trick our brains because it's not even, there's nothing real or healthy or natural about it at this point. So they manipulate certain aspects of the food to keep us coming back.
The thought of even biting into a crunchy, crisp apple, like I'm salivating, thinking of you're right, it's the crisp. I'm like, oof, that sounds so good.